Voles and bats will delay it. We're talking about the Gatwick second runway, but net zero could actually kill it. And there's a little graphic on there where it says it's taken 12 years to decide to move the second runway 12 metres. So it's actually already there. It's just been used as a kind of relief runway, as far as I'm aware. Let's find out what he means by that. And have we got Steve on rainwater first? Yeah, let's do that.
Morning, Mike. I've been using rainwater for years to flush my toilet. It comes down from the sky, it goes in a reservoir, and by the magic of Victorian engineering, it ends up in my toilet.
Yes, I can see what you did there, Steve. I think that's not kind of what they have in mind. I think what they have in mind is you actually collecting it in some kind of water butt and using it that way. I don't know. Very strange. Ross, very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Mike.
You know, on the one hand, we talk about expanding airports. On the other hand, we get these kind of green types telling us that we should be using rainwater to wash in and, you know, all sorts of ridiculous ideas from the sort of 16th century. But tell us about Gatwick, because it seems to be all a bit of a muddle.
Yeah, well, the situation with Gatwick is it does have two runways at the moment.
Right.
The main runway, and it's got an emergency runway, which can be used when the other one's out of service. But the trouble is the runways aren't quite far away enough to be used concurrently when you can't have one plane landing on one and another plane landing on the other, because they're 12 meters too close to each other by regulations. So what Gatwick's proposing to do is to move the emergency runway 12 meters to the north, and then it will obey the regulations and can be used independently. So it's not a sort of enormous project. It can be all completed within the airport's existing boundaries, and yet it's already taken sort of 12 years to get to the point of get from the Gatwick sort of announcing this project and the government approving it, and it's likely to take another 5 years before it's open. And a fascinating contrast between what happened in 1948 when the Russians cut off the land access to West Berlin and we had the Berlin airlift. Everything had to be taken in by plane. On that occasion, the military authorities, with the help of West German citizens, built a runway. Do you have a guess how long it took them between breaking ground, deciding to build this runway, and the first plane landing on it, becoming operational?
Well, if I know the army as I do, I think I'd probably say about a month.
Well, it was 90 days. Yeah, they started on 5th of August and it was open on 5th of November. 3 months to build a runway and now it takes us like 17 years and to think about it and then go through the courts and then get on with building it. And then, of course, you find some rare variety of vole or something who's in the way. But in the case of Gatwick's second runway, in the case of all airport expansion, there is another very, very big blot on the horizon, and that is the shape of the 2050 net zero target, which demands that the government, legally binding demand that the government achieves net zero carbon emissions by that date. And there is just absolutely no way that any airport expansion is going to be consistent with that target, because we don't have the affordable technology at the moment to decarbonize jet aircraft.
Right.
So
well, isn't there some suggestion...
it's rather doomed in the courts.
Yeah, isn't there some suggestion they're going to be using biofuel of some kind by then?
Yeah, there's this thing called sustainable airline fuel, which it can be made in a variety of different ways. The easiest way to make it is by using used cooking oil,
right.
But there are only so many chip shops in the world, and this is the problem. You can collect all the used cooking oil in the world, but it's not going to power all the world's jet airliners, even slightly. And not only that, it's very expensive. It's
Well, you would think so, yeah, because you're effectively collecting it from sort of, I don't know, relatively small outlets who are making it and putting it into, instead of putting it into waste, putting it into something else. And then you're somehow going to try and collate all of that, put it into a great big tanker and drive it to an airport and fill a plane with it. And I'm not even certain I want to fly on a plane that's full of used cooking oil, to be honest.
Well, I think the oil will be processed in such a way to be safe. I mean, Virgin
yeah, they did a flight,
Atlantic already flew a plane across the Atlantic on this fuel, and I wouldn't have any safety concerns about it, but it's just the simple economics of it. to manufacture this fuel, well, there's not enough chip shops in the world, as I say. So the other way to manufacture is from green hydrogen, which is made through electrolysis of water and carbon dioxide. You can make it synthetically. But
Seems to be an awful lot of
even
trouble to
more
go to, doesn't it?
expensive. It's going to be about 7 times the
Well, yeah,
price
but this is the
of
thing.
normal jet fuel.
You go to an awful lot of trouble to replace something which works perfectly well, which is called aviation fuel, which tends to be pretty damn good, actually. But in terms of the actual runway itself and whether it becomes something which Rachel Reeves says it will become, have a look at what she says the benefits of this are going to be. Because she seems to think that not only will it be cheaper for people to travel, right, but actually somehow it will create loads and loads of jobs. Check it out.
Government are backing a second runway here at Gatwick. That's in addition to our commitments to a third runway at Heathrow, small modular reactors, a new nuclear power station in Suffolk, backing energy projects and transport projects right around the country. But this extra runway at Gatwick will mean that people going on holiday will have a greater choice of destinations. It will mean lower costs for a family holiday, and it will also mean more good jobs, paying decent wages through this injection of cash into our economy. We said as a government we would back the builders and not the blockers, and that is exactly what we are doing with this announcement.
So, any of that true?
Well, she's not wrong to say that an extra runway at Gatwick would add destinations for British air passengers and could lead to, cheaper, more affordable fares. But, how do you get there when you've got these reams of environmental regulations which are making it very difficult for the government to build this or any other infrastructure project?
But wouldn't you need to also build another terminal?
Oh, yeah, it is part of the plans to expand the number of aircraft stands at Gatwick.
So we're talking, I think, probably quite a long time away before any of this can be happening, right?
Yes, yeah. So it'd be at least 5 years, and it's already been 12 years already. So, yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath that you're going to have a greater choice of flights in future. But
and why would it be cheaper? Just because there's more flights?
Well, if it's cheaper, there's more competition. Oh, sorry, if there's more runway capacity, there's potentially more competition, which can
well, all I know is flights that used to be a lot cheaper seems to be a lot more expensive.
Well, yes, I mean, obviously, the flights are going to be the price of flying is going to be forced up by sustainable aviation for the cost of sustainable aviation fuel, which the government does, by the way, has what they call the sustainable airline fuel mandate, which from this year airlines have got to use 2%, a mix of 2% SAF in their planes. By 2030 that increases, and 2040 it increases further. So but the cost of that, the cost of moving over to a greener fuel is going to force up airline prices more than this third runway will try to bring them down.
Oh, quite.
And another problem, by the way, when it comes to net zero and flying, and why it's going to sort of condemn the airline industry, is that about half of, or more than half of the greenhouse gas emissions from planes, according to some estimates, come from the contrails, the water vapor clouds that are pushed out the back of the engine. So however green the fuel is, you've still got this problem with contrails. And so how the government is going to argue that more airline expansion is consistent with net zero, I just can't see. I think it's be doomed in the courts as long as we have that net zero target.
I know, it's crazy. Anyway, it's a great piece, Ross. Thank you very much indeed. Ross Clark in the Sun today. Gatwick's second runway shambles. Yeah, they're going to move it 12 metres to the north, and then they're going to start using it at some point in the next 5 to 10 years. So, I wouldn't book any holidays just yet, on the basis that it will probably be even more expensive by the time you get on the bleeding plane, because it will be full of chip pan oil and there'll be chemtrails coming out the back of it. Can anybody make any sense of any of this rubbish? It's completely mad.